What up, guys? This week is pretty dry, so I thought, why don't I make a nice tips and hidden and not so hidden tech video to help some people out. Now, I didn't really put this in any specific order or any specific theme. However, if I do come across something I already have a guide on, I will keep it very brief, and any of the guides I already did, I'm going to put in the end screen. So if you want to go check them out, you can. Now, first, I don't think this is the biggest thing, because in this game, as long as like you have one person alive, even if you get your ass blasted, you can always click retry and start from the beginning of a specific boss for like solo raid, for example, and it's not going to be much big of a deal. But if you're like me and you're kind of brainlessly going through your dailies, there's a chance you'll, for example, click Kraken and then go into a team where you don't have your Black Shadow. So here, for example, you can click this. Let's say, oh, I'm an idiot. I didn't put my Black Shadow team. So what I usually do is you can easily, at the top right, close the entire window. So here, I'm going to close the whole screen. And now with the game reopened, I can go back to my interception, for example, and show you guys that I still have my 3 tries for the day. Now, this is really not the biggest deal, but I don't really see anybody talking about this, and it is pretty nice if you accidentally fuck up going in with the wrong team, for example. I usually only have to do it when I accidentally go with the wrong team against like Kraken, for example, if I don't have Black Shadow. Yeah, here we go. As you can see, we still have 3 attempts, even though I realistically clicked Start Battle. You just have to exit from the game. I imagine this works, by the way, on the mobile version too. I feel like a lot of these are gonna be hit or miss on the mobile. I think they should work, but I wouldn't be too confident. I haven't tested it on mobile. I don't really play mobile much because my phone gets way too hot when I play this game. So next, though, I want to go over the FPS machine gun thing. So in case you don't know, there is this setting which they recently made a new one, which I guess I can go over first. I believe it's this one, correct? Yeah, here we go. So this is for like machine guns especially. It's so that their fire count doesn't drop and you get like missing bullets. I believe this only really happens if you have low FPS and it interacts with like machine guns, for example, causing them to like have invisible bullets or whatever, like phantom bullets. They just kind of disappear. I'm not sure. I'm going to put on the screen my runs that I did a bit earlier, but right quick, it is right here. Make sure you equipped 60 frames, and then turning that on is pretty nice. I believe this is, like I said, so you don't get any phantom bullets. I mean, as you can see right here, I did some runs with, what did I do? Rappy and Mihara, right? I did full auto on the practice range with the same exact teams, and everything was the same time, same everything. And the only thing that was different was I capped my frames at 30 for the first run, and I also turned that setting off with the machine gun, whatever it was called. And as you can see, I mean, I did way less damage with the 30 frames than just a regular 60. So turning this on is very imperative. Now, I'm not really sure how this is gonna go with the mobile version because, like I said, my phone gets really hot, so I don't know how that affects the mobile versions. Alright, the next thing I wanted to go over is burst generation. Now, burst generation is a very important mechanic in this game, and if you ever click any unit, you can see that every unit has a burst generation like number, I guess you could say. But essentially, for the most part, it's based off of the gun that you're using. And I believe the highest order of burst generation is probably rocket launcher, sniper, and then shotgun, I'd say. And the other ones are kind of non-comparable, so they kind of don't really matter. But for the most part, as you can see here, you can see it the best with Alice, so I'll be showing you guys Alice. You can spam your shooting so that it'll help your burst generation. It's pretty nice to get used to spamming. Obviously, I'm not sure how it'll be working on mobile, but on the PC, I can just spam click, which I'm not gonna lie, gets my finger tired after I do too long, but it is ideal. This will help with your burst generation as the big shots will just generate more burst. The only issue with this is obviously you're going to want to use a CDR burst 1 so that your bursts are very smooth, but this is a pretty nice thing to get used to, especially with Alice, because if you're playing on auto versus you playing by yourself, like manually, Alice's burst will actually give you less DPS if you're doing it on auto rather than you are doing it manually, especially if you have charge speed. The like AI buffers a bit, so you'll be missing out on damage. So I would say it is a very nice to learn. Now, I'm not going to show the rocket launcher, but it is kind of the same concept, because you can also spam, and the reason why that's good is because it hits multiple people. So you'll have multiple instances of getting burst generation. So it is very easy to do. The next thing I wanted to bring up is about power deficiency. Now, what I refer to when I say is that, so when you're going through the campaign, you will see the recommended power, and it's pretty self-explanatory, just giving you a nice gauge of what the power of the enemies are going to be like, yada yada yada. However, it is good to note that now that they introduced the skip feature, where if you overpower the campaign, for example, you can completely skip the fight, which honestly I would say wait for that because it takes way shorter, and if you're like me and you're really lazy, you kind of don't want to do it manually, even though it's not that hard. The power deficient is essentially a strat for your campaign if you are deficient on power on said stage. It's pretty self-explanatory in that sense, but essentially the main tech, I would say, I got really used to it because when I started the game, my main setup for my team was Amelia and Alice as my main attacker. What I would do is the first rounds, I would burst as Amelia and clear a lot of the small minions, and just so that I can rush the last boss, like when it spawns the final boss, and then once I'm able to finish that burst, I will try to get as much burst generation as I can so that I can pump out Alice's burst and have her just burst down the boss and then clear the stage. I got through a lot of stages like that, even with a really heavy power deficiency. So it is a very important, and if you want to rush the campaign and get caught up, to have somewhat of an understanding on that kind of strategy. Now, it doesn't have to be like Amelia or Alice to do that with. Obviously, a lot of people do that with Red Hood. Black Shadow's pretty good. Once she gets a lot under the stage's power, you are going to see a bit of trouble. But for the most part, someone like Red Hood can basically do the same exact thing that I usually do with Alice, especially when I was starting out the game. Now, I actually forgot to mention this, but while I just remembered about the settings things, let me actually show you guys a little bit more about the settings. So, let's see, I believe it's somewhere around here. Yeah, this right here sucks. So what this does, if you guys are playing through the campaign, for example, and you finish the first wave of minions and then the boss spawns, the boss will like get focused and it'll kind of like screw your screen. I would recommend you turn that shit off immediately because it's just so distracting. You're playing on a specific character and it just takes you out of that and just shoves you into the screen of the boss. It is so annoying and like disruptive. So I would recommend turning that the fuck off. And I guess also screen shake. I don't know how people play with screen shake on games, I'm not gonna lie. That and like motion blur, that shit sucked. Anywho. Just a side note, that just popped in my head. Now, the next thing I wanted to go over is pretty well known, I'd say. If you don't know, the official Discord for this game, I figured out how to get the link, by the way. I'll put it on screen. It was a bit easier than I thought. Maybe I'm just stupid. Originally, I did see the invite link, but I just forgot. But I could have sworn I had trouble inviting people when I originally joined. I don't remember, though. Anywho, doesn't matter. In this Discord, there are some channels, as you can see, with the CD keys. There is one for CD redemption. So how this works is you link your account. You can do this if you want. If you don't really trust the Discord or something, you don't have to do it. The main draw to this is the CD key channel. So in this channel, you will see just CD keys. I believe this is community handled. So like when someone gets wind of a CD key, for example, they'll just like put it in there and just everyone will use it until either they reach the max capacity or it just runs out of time. this is pretty nice to have. I mean, obviously it's just free stuff, and even if you miss out on some of them, like for example, some of these are posted like really early in the morning, so by the time I wake up it's like max usage. So unfortunately there are some cases where you're just gonna get nothing, but it is free and an additional thing. So I would say if you can, just join the Discord every once in a while, check, maybe you'll be lucky. If you want to really turn on notifications, you can. I think my Discord's like notifications is bugging out, so I'm not really sure how that works for me, but anywho, the next thing I wanted to go over is a bit about team building. Now, here I am in my box. Now, for the most part, team building in this game is not too complicated, I would say. Now, for the burst ones, I would recommend only really taking cooldown reduction, especially if you're starting out. I mean, the CDR on burst ones, for example, is just way too good. It just makes your bursting really smooth. You can just get a lot of damage out consistently and efficiently. So definitely having a cooldown reduction burst 1 is probably your best bet. Next, for the burst 2 is actually pretty interesting. A lot of meta, quote-unquote, teams have 2 burst 2s and 2 burst 3s. And the reason for that is the burst 2 synergies are actually very interesting in this game. For example, I mean, there are units that are built to synergize with each other. For example, the Maid Mast and the Maid Anchor. Maid Anchor is really good for stopping Maid Mast from stunning herself. She gives a lot of healing for the whole team. And then both of them give a really nice support for the distributed damage type of units like Scarlet Black Shadow. And another really good combo is Crown Naga. So Crown will keep getting healed from Naga. Even if the team is fully healed at full health, Naga will keep healing Crown, and she'll always be getting the buff that she gets when she is healed. Right here, this one. She'll get this 20% attack basically the whole fight. So it is a very good combo to have those. Oh, I guess I did forget to mention, but there are some burst ones, for example, like Tia, where you can burst with her, but you will not move on to the next stage. You will go back to the burst 1, and that in itself is a bit of a synergize with Naga. However, in recent times, I feel like Naga is synergized more with Crown and used more with her, unfortunately. There is some usage, though, to get out of Tia, so I definitely don't want to count her out. And finally, burst 3. Now, burst 3s aren't too complicated. They're just your main attackers, and there are some techs with 3 burst 3 teams instead of having like 2 burst 2s in case they don't synergize, or just to have more damage. For example, Helm with her burst generation mechanic and also her burst in general. There is some teams where you can get away with running 3 burst 3s, mainly like Helm, Rappy, and then I don't know, maybe Alice or Modernia, Cindy, and then you can have your Little Mermaid and Crown. Not too complicated, but I believe that is everything for the team building. Oh, before I forget, while we're on the team building talk, there is a tech when you are building your team. It is the position on what you do. So the leftmost, and then the one to the right of that, and then the middle, and then the one to the right of that, and then the rightmost unit. Now, for the most part, I don't think the formation matters too much in this game, but there is one thing that I definitely know, and so when your team is at full HP and someone heals, it doesn't matter from where. So for example, what Naga does, well, she heals, that heal will proc on the leftmost unit every time. So if you are running Naga and Crown, it is really important that Crown is on the leftmost side of your team. That will always proc her attack buff if you have a Naga. So when Naga heals and your team is at full HP, it'll always proc on the leftmost unit, which should be Crown. And when that does proc, it will buff her attack and basically have it up the whole fight. It is kind of an unknown thing. I feel like a lot of people know it nowadays, but it is nice to mention in case some people don't know, because I don't think the formation matters too much other than little stuff like that. Next, I wanted to talk about a bit of the early game. So when you're starting out and you're trying to get past the 160 barrier, if you don't know, the 160 barrier is essentially what we call the barrier that a lot of people hit, because it essentially is the weight of getting, I believe it's 5 MLB units, right? So you need to pull 5 units 4 times, essentially. So that's what we call MLB in this game. And once you get those, you'll be able to unlock the Synchro device. And once you get there, you'll be able to start leveling your girls over 160. And now, once you're at that barrier, the only thing really holding you back will be your core dust. So I would recommend, if you ever have any of the items that give you a choice which case to get, I would recommend you always get the core cases. Now, there are some scenarios where you're later into the game where you might run out of the battle data, or you might run out of credit. Currently, I don't think I'm struggling too much on that. I feel like a lot of people have been spending a lot of the battle data, converting that into core dust, which is probably where they run into issues. But I know people have definitely been running out of credits, so there is that. I haven't run into that problem personally yet, so I'm not really sure. I've just been converting every single case where I have a choice into the core dust cases, and I would recommend you doing that too. So once you get past the 160 barrier, you'll be able to level up a decent amount. I don't think you have to go crazy and optimize like your other cases. I would recommend you just only buy core cases, and then once you get there, it'll be easier for you. It's not the biggest deal, but it is something to keep in mind. Now, next, I wanted to go over a bit more early game stuff as well. Now, when I started playing the game, it was after a lot of interesting mechanics have already been released. So, for example, the Overload was already out, the doll mechanic was already out, and honestly, these serve as really nice tools for early game. I believe it is called power padding, essentially what it's called. It's essentially just buffing your character's power, basically for like nothing. And it is really nice to take advantage early, especially if you're participating in solo range. You'll be getting free dolls and stuff. They won't matter too much since you can't level them up crazy or get much value out of them, but it is something nice to just use, especially on units that you'll be using a lot. Like, for example, Alice, if you can get Alice, she will help you a lot early. So investing in her for the long run is not the worst idea, along with Litter, Naga. But for the most part, using dolls and overload gear as a nice like cheese to get free power so that you can push the campaign is very useful, and a thing that I definitely used a lot when I was starting the game. I would definitely just power the dolls, make sure I have the max, and just get free power for that, and then try to push the campaign. And finally, last thing I wanted to go over. Now, I did make a shop guide already, so I don't want to send on this too much, and I feel like I went over this in there, but a lot of people don't tend to buy this manufacturer thing. I definitely see some people are like, what is this used for? And essentially, these are really good because it lets you re-roll specific gear types. So, for example, the best thing to re-roll with this is your abnormal gear. So, what it will do is you select 2 gears, for example. So, where is my abnormal gear? Here we go. Correct? This is my normal gear, right? Okay, yeah, I'm not crazy. So, like, look at this. 13 Defender boots. They're going to release 13 collab units that are all Defender. Like, I'm not going to fucking need this ever. So, I can just, boom, select both of them. And then you can pick which manufacturer you want to turn that into. It is a gamble, and it is not guaranteed. However, it is a nice option to have to transfer your gear into another type. Now, I believe I'm missing some Elysion. I guess I will do this. This is Elysion, correct? Alright, I'm not blind. So yeah, you select 2, you select which manufacturer, it'll roll 1 out of the 12 combinations, and then, let's see, hopefully I can get boots. I am a bit low on boots. Dang it. I wasn't on that. But yeah, that is a really nice way to reroll stuff. It isn't that reliable to get like the specific gear you're trying to go for, but it is really nice to get rid of some of the gear that is useless. Obviously, like this select gear, you can pick literally whatever you want, is clearly better, but like this is really rare to get, and you can buy this in the cooperate section, but it is really expensive, and honestly, I would not recommend it. And also, real quick, I might make a new version of the shop guide. I'm not gonna lie, they are updating that frequently, but real quick, this currency right here, the silver mileage ticket, you get this when you do Maltese on the ordinary recruit banners. And for this, if you're below the 160 wall, I would recommend you only really buy like litter, for example, or something that'll help you MLB a specific unit so you can start getting past it. If you are already past the 160, I would recommend you don't spend this at all until you see which treasure units are good. Unfortunately, they took out the old treasure units. This is the 4th season, but I saved up a lot of this stuff right here so that once it was last season, so when Helm came out, I was able to get a lot of copies of Helm from this. So I would recommend that you definitely save a lot of your silver mileage, especially if you're in later in the game, for the treasure units and the future treasure units. Those are very valuable. Unfortunately, not all of the treasure units are really, really good. Like, I feel like Helm was kind of a fluke. She's kind of like really good compared to everybody else, at least. I think Tove definitely has some value, but I mean, some of the treasure units, I feel like they could have done a bit more. Maybe that's asking for too much. But it is definitely nice to save up so that you don't get screwed on the treasure, especially like me, where you're really behind on the treasure dupes. I don't know why, but the treasure units have just been railing me. Also, real quick, they are redoing the mold that you can buy in the shop. So if you are planning on spending all your money on the molds, just wait till the update drops so that you can get the new types of mold that'll be in the shop. Just kind of sidetracked to tack on, but it is coming, so just make sure you do that. Now, I think that is it. Wow, this went on a little longer than I thought, but I was just yapping the whole time. But I believe that is everything. I just wanted to go over some random things that came to my head. It is a bit dry this week, so I wanted to spice it up a little bit. So let me know what you guys think about these tips and techs, and if you knew some of them or if you didn't know, and also if you think I left off any really nice techs that you know, let me know about that in the comments. I did try to leave off a bit of the obvious ones so this wouldn't be too boring, but maybe I missed some obvious ones like a dumb fuck, but I don't know. I think that is it though. Let me know what you guys think about all that stuff, and I will catch you guys later.